If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles.
Hello, BMFox here, and I'm back with another comment video on the release notes. It has been a while that there has been a major upgrade, but this is one, a balancing upgrade. It was launched May 30th, so only 5 days ago. As you can read, it is time for a meeting at headquarters. All strategies will have to be renewed as we released a set of balancing changes with today's update. These changes will only apply to newly created games. Battleships, railroad guns, infantry, paratroopers, motorized infantry, as well as light and heavy tanks have all received buffs to make them more competitive with other units in their class. We have also made rockets, flying bombs and nuclear weapons hit harder against all targets by unifying their damage dealt to ground units and buildings. These are only the highlights of these balance pass. Please check out the detailed release notes for the complete list and changes. So let's do that. Then here we are with the date correctly, this time May 30th. They have added a button that shows the Doctrine information in the Army information panel. You might know that if you click a stack, you can open the Army information panel where you can find all the information about your stack, which kind of damage you deal, defense, terrain bonuses, all that. Well, now you have a button which gives you more information about your Doctrine, but which is really cool, because before you had to click on the upper right corner button to access the game wiki, and then you have to click 2 more times before you were able to see the doctrines. So lots of clicking for strictly nothing. But then here it comes, balancing. Freaking railroad guns. They've reduced the building requirements from level 4 to level 3 to have a minimum production time. So you're gonna be able to get those railroad guns out faster. The dev said, "We felt like it took too long to effectively produce the railroad gun. This change makes their production time comparable to a SP rocket artillery, which unlocks the same day." Yeah, maybe, but the SP rocket artillery doesn't deal the same damage, doesn't have the same range, man. It's my humble and personal opinion, and a lot of veteran players agree with me that railroad guns are way too overpowered. I mean, it's a freaking railroad gun. You need railroads normally to make it move, not in Call of War. You can take your railroad guns on a hike in the mountains, no problem. The Germans only produced 2 big railroad guns, Schwerer Gustav and Dora, and historians are actually arguing that Schwerer Gustav and Dora might actually have been the same gun, that the Germans only produced 1 railroad gun. At the end of the war, 2 more were planned, but they weren't finished. So even if the Germans managed to make 4 railroad guns during the whole war, there should be a limit on the amount of railroad guns that you can produce. I know, like 10 maybe. Luckily, it seems that the devs agreed that with this change, railroad guns will become even more overpowered. As we got Freezy that has replied on Discord, he said that the change that reduced secret lab building requirement is more than as an experimental change, and it might actually get reverted. So we'll see what happens, right? Anyhow, it's food for thought for another video. And then light tanks speed has increased by 5 kilometers an hour for each level. And with this, light tanks meet on par with motorized infantry. We want to make them synergize better with other fast units. This opens more situations where light tanks are viable. Yeah, because if you're Axis and you want to do a light tank spam together with motorized infantry, stack them together, very good early game crushing unit. For those who like to do blitzkrieg strategies, this is a very good update, because before a light tank spam wasn't really that good, because light tanks, well, they only counter light armored units like armored cars. But that's basically it in the early game. They become more interesting in the late game to attack SP artillery units, SP rocket artillery, or even SP anti-air, but they were too slow, so maybe now the light tanks are gonna be able to catch up with those SP units and lock them in combat, because light tanks shred self-propelled units. The rocket and flying bomb increase damage against unarmored, light armored and heavy armored ground units. the damage has been increased with 3 or 4 hit points, and so they can be now used in a wider range of targets. That's why we brought the damage against ground units on par with the damage against buildings. They should free up rocket and flying bombs from their niche as bunker busters, only opening up more causes. Let it rain. Alright, because personally I rarely use rockets or flying bombs. Well, I never use flying bombs because they're pretty weak. Rockets, I use them sometimes, but rarely, because they're single use. It's a waste of resources if you ask me, but who am I? They have increased the HP of heavy tanks. They've been underperforming, yeah, because they're freaking slow, man. And so they decided to give them a HP buff, but is this enough? Well, they are riding fortresses, don't get me wrong, but they are so freaking slow, man. However, if you want to take out the level 4 heavy tank, 185 hit points, freaking hell, good luck with your artillery or SP artillery. You're gonna have to shoot and scoot a lot. And of course, if the heavy tanks are being buffed, also the tank destroyer is being buffed. They are dealing more damage, although only a little, but it would become too overpowered. But you can see with every level it becomes increasingly more, both in the attack and in the defense. Because yeah, of course, they need to make sure that tank destroyers remain an effective counter, so they're buffing only their damage against heavily armored targets. Infantry reduced gaps between research levels. Maximum level is now already available on day 16. Decreased cost for research, production and upkeep of higher level units. That's pretty cool, because I use infantry a lot to protect my artillery, and they're better than militia, let's be honest. And so this change will give infantry a longer window of relevancy, which also increases their efficiency during later stages of the game. I'm pretty happy with this, man. If you like artillery, it's gonna make your artillery stacks better protected in the late game because you stack them with infantry. Really cool. They did the same thing for motorized infantry, decreased cost for research, production and upkeep of higher level units, and they made their maximum research also 4 days earlier available. However, I rarely use motorized infantry because they don't have enough hit points. I used to produce them with axes, stack them with medium tanks, but you make a stack of 5 motorized infantry and 5 medium tanks, and your infantry are gone in no time, and you're left over with a stack of 5 medium tanks that are more than 50% health still. Aircraft transport armor class has been changed to unarmored. Imagine you capture an airport, those planes are parked on the ground, they can only use their guns stationary. I mean, why would they be light armored? That doesn't make any sense. Planes aren't armored, so that's a good change. So ground planes are more vulnerable, and now they're even more vulnerable. So plan those routes of your convoys accordingly, or maybe, I don't know, fly your planes from A to B by air, man. You should never ever use your planes in convoy. Also, paratroopers received increased health. They're very specialized, yeah, they are. I mean, the deployment time of, what is it, 2 hours? I think, I don't know, I never use paratroopers because they need to assemble during 2 hours, and in that time they're getting killed by tactical bombers or by artillery. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that paratroopers need to deploy that long. Nuclear rockets increase damage against buildings. I've never used the nuclear rockets in my life. The game always ends before I get to use them, and I only try to make them once. Same for nuclear bomber, increased damage. However, nuclear bombers, they're still sitting ducks against interceptors, so I rarely use them. They increased the hit points of battleships. They want to make battleships the kings of the sea. I guess that they are referring with this to the dreadnought class, which got out of use because they were simply too big and too slow as well. So they gave an HP buff to make them a better alternative against cruisers. Yeah, because I've always said it, that if you have the same amount of resources, and with those resources you build battleships, you can make more cruisers with those same resources. And if you then battle battleships versus cruisers, cruisers are winning. And I've promised in my naval guide that I would make a video on this. I haven't done so, but now I think I really should test how battleships are improved with this change. Exciting. And they said did the same for aircraft carriers, increased the hit points, which brings them in line with the new Battleship HP values. Very interesting stuff. So you're gonna be able to use the aircraft carrier as an HP sponge to protect your battleships. Strategical bombers slightly increased cost for research, production and upkeep. That's good because if you have excess strategical bombers, 10 of them stacked together, they're virtually impossible to take out, and they're gonna take out those level 3 airports in a blink of an eye, man. And this is exactly what the devs are saying. Strategical bombers are good options to inflict big damage to an unprepared opponent, as they are quite sturdy. We want to make them harder to replace and have increased costs accordingly. And then there's more changes that follow up the last balancing changes, and these changes unify the cost ratio between production and research. So slightly increased research cost for cruisers, tactical bombers, artillery, SP artillery, rocket artillery, SP rocket artillery. Only difference is that the attack bombers are actually a bit cheaper now to research. All the other units are now more expensive to research. So in this case, as allies get a 25% research reduction, they're gonna benefit now even more with these increased research costs compared to other doctrines. And for the rest, there were some bug fixes, but yeah, that's it. Pretty big upgrade, man. I'm wondering what that will bring. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and hit that bell button for notifications. I want to say a warm thank you to my members and elite members for supporting this channel.